Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business is small project NACC 158.
This is a 10 by 10 shed to be located 54 feet from wetlands. My understanding from Heidi is that they need to do a little leveling with some gravel or some kind.
Correct.
And then that'll be about 52 feet from the wetland. She's already been out there to ascertain where the wetland is and where the 50-foot mark is, so.
Just only word of caution is, when you're close, but, close enough, you just be doubly sure before you cite it so that you're not within that 50, where would make it ineligible for the small project. But the proposal looks pretty straightforward otherwise. Oh, sir. First motion is to deem the request to be a small project type C, shed less than 100 square feet.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
And the second motion is to approve this project as a small project, and to have a pre and post construction inspection. And you calling for erosion controls for the land disturbance?
No, I don't think.
No need to?
Heidi saw any need for that.
Okay, very good.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Well set. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next one is NACC number 159, Farnsworth Reservation Trail.
So this, as the plan comes up here, the trail in red is what's proposed. Currently, if you come off of the town farm forest property, you end up on South Bradford Street and have to walk along a very narrow section of the road to get to the entrance to the Farnsworth Reservation. This trail would basically pop you right across the street and onto that main trail. I think Glenn's here to answer any questions you have about the work.
I mean, I don't have any questions. If Jen, you're familiar with this project and the route they've selected, and there's no particular crossings or anything you're concerned with?
Glenn flagged it and we walked it in the field. It's at least 25 feet from the wetland when you first enter the property, and when you pop out onto the main trail, that main Farnsworth entrance trail walks by a vernal pool, but their trail is more than 50 feet from that. And they'd only be cutting, small saplings.
Well, this is reservation property. There's
Greenbelt sent a letter authorizing,
Allowing it, okay.
allowing it and saying they support it.
and there's no vegetative screen to any houses we're concerned with at all, anywhere near this?
There's no house anywhere near.
Anywhere near it. Okay, I'm all set.
Motion?
First motion is to consider the application under NACC 159 to be a type E small project.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
And I move that we grant approval as a small project on NACC number 159, and that the condition of no tree removal greater than 1 inch diameter be allowed, and to have a pre and post construction inspection.
It would just be a post, because we already
Just
walked
post?
it, it's already
You've
flagged.
already done the pre?
Yep, so
Very
just
good.
post.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you, well set.
Deb, second.
RDA's 497 Foster Street, request to continue to 10/21.
Wait, oh, okay, sorry, I
Second.
got ahead of me.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait, hold on, 497 Foster Street needs to be read and opened.
Oh, it has to be
It's a
read,
new-
okay.
Although, I thought we were done with reading.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so.
Are there any abutters here for 497 Foster Street?
There is one, but she's just here to, I told her we were going to continue, so.
Okay, if you require that we read the public notice that you got in the newspaper, we can read it aloud, or otherwise we can just simply waive it. So you don't want us to read it, right?
So the applicant's representative couldn't be here this evening, so they're just requesting to continue for 2 weeks to the 21st.
Right, so you, in other words, all we would be reading is what you got in the mail. You're the abutter, right? So do you mind if we don't read it? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so it's,
So just a
Waive the
request to
reading.
continue
Waive
to
the
the 21st.
reading.
Moved and I seconded.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay, request to continue to 10/21.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
motion?
Oh, we got that. It was Deb and Joe.
Okay, good. Wonderful. All right, next one is 602 Boxford Street.
Foster.
Just want to make sure I pull up the right one. See if this is it, right, Phil?
Yes.
So I think we opened this some weeks ago, and it's been continued. The applicant's been working with Natural Heritage. This wasn't part of the original MISA filing, is that correct, Phil, with Heritage?
That's correct. It's filed separate ownership.
So these two lots are A&R lots. They originally didn't come before us. They've been cleared if you've been by them, but that clearing was supposed to have been outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. There was some disturbance within the 100-foot buffer zone when the well was dug. And they're also looking to enlarge the land around the house into the 100-foot buffer zone permanently. Natural Heritage has weighed in, although they haven't issued a formal letter, and that pinkish-purple line will be the restricted area. And I'm sure Phil can detail more what that means. And
Yeah, there'll be, that purple line, there will be it's a line of a conservation easement, and we're working out the wording now with Natural Heritage and what they want that to say, but it'll be permanently restricted, so it's a 2-acre lot, and you can see the only thing that will be developed is what's shown on the plan. The rest of the property will remain natural and controlled by the covenant that will be filed with Natural Heritage. You get some perspective on that if you just look at this. Here's the developed portion, and that's the remainder of the land that'll be undeveloped. Originally working with them, I just explained your rules and the fact that we couldn't go beyond the 100 feet, couldn't go into the 75-foot because of the vernal pools out there. But they wanted this restriction line put on the plan, and that's what's taken a while.
Jack, you probably want to speak more, right? Okay.
So what I'm not following, and I understand all the words that you said, sequence-wise though, they cleared an area to advance the well prior
Yeah.
to having the Natural Heritage feedback, or prior to filing with them? We don't know how that happened first.
Right, they went in to drill a well, and on that side, there was a wetland that's not on this property. So no one was aware of the presence of that wetland. All of the wetland we knew about was on the property. That was flagged, came through with an ANRAD here. And it wasn't till after they went in, Heidi went out and then pointed out where the flags were on the other property. So then we located those flags and put them on the plan. So that's why it got,
So the other property was not part of the larger
it
subdivision?
was not
before,
part of the
just-
subdivision, it's a separate
just
piece of
Completely
land.
separate.
We had no idea that there was a wetland on it.
I have a better understanding of it. So now that it is disturbed, and now with the language worked out with Natural Heritage in order to get this easement in place, they're satisfied to just let that revegetate?
Yeah, we're going to do some revegetation, but just let it get back to being wild again.
Okay, I'm all set.
how large was the area that needs to be restored?
About 1,600 square feet.
That's it.
No questions.
Phil, my only question, is this the one that you got flagged the first time when you had, they almost like gave you like a cease and desist? Are these the lots that they were,
No,
remember that's part of the main subdivision?
I don't think we ever,
You got a letter from,
does that ring a bell?
One of Heritage's letters told you not to do any additional work on the site until, originally I thought that was because they knew these two lots had been disturbed, but it
Oh.
was, I don't know, they just didn't want you going in there and starting the clearing
Right,
before.
we're not, that's right.
That letter had nothing to do with these lots.
so that's not to do with these lots, it has to
That's
do
with the subdivision, right.
Okay, I'm all set. Any more questions? Like I said, normally, I like to have everything done before we, get the letter from them
Yeah.
and clean it up instead of,
It's a little different because of us working with them on the MISA to get these conservation restrictions, and it's got to go through clients' attorneys, legal department with MISA. So it's a little different than just that letter you get where they say it's okay, go ahead.
So Phil, even though the MISA restriction allows you to develop a portion inside the 100, are you sticking with the hay bale line that's shown on the plan?
Yeah, yes.
So
And the
you won't
reason
be-
it doesn't follow the hay bale line is they want straight lines.
Oh, okay.
Originally I sent them a plan with a lot of bends in the line, and they said, well, straighten it out. And I didn't want to put it inside the hay bales, because then it'd be a bit of a problem.
Right. So the only portion you're seeking this negative determination on is the 100 where you encroach in the back?
Yes.
Okay.
Between the 100 and the hay bale line, that's correct.
So we could also add a condition to the determination that all work comply with natural heritage requirements would be my recommendation.
On that recommendation, as much as I want to move this along as a matter of efficiency, I think it could be dangerous to simply cite it, because if, say they reach impasse and and we have an RDA that gives them a negative and comply with anything they issue, well, until it's formally accepted, there is no condition out there. Now, again, natural heritage would have to come in on their own and enforce. I don't see any harm, I don't see any, since they need both permits anyway, in us continuing it and simply make the decision once we know that the negotiations are complete.
Well, one thing is, we need to get that septic system in before too late.
But it's academic, because if you don't reach agreement with natural heritage, our negative determination is, I don't want to cut their legs off by saying they couldn't reach an agreement, and therefore the septic system got put in, and the lot got developed. I mean, I think, how close are you to getting this thing finalized?
MISA and
Septic system's gonna get put in anyway. They're not gonna say no to it. It's not
And
within-
I mean, it's just a matter of wording on the easements. There's no impasse as far as area goes.
All right, I think middle ground is that we vote it, hold it in abeyance until we have evidence submitted to us that the easement is in place, or at least the language is in place, and then release it. I just don't want to have a relinquishing of any determination whatsoever if this issue is not finalized.
I agree with Joe, like I said, we just, on this particular application, it's not as severe, but other applications, if we start putting the
You're okay?
cart before the horse.
You guys always look at me and tell, you have to convince him, not me. I work for you.
Well, how far along?
We don't need to convince them, we need to have a support of our staff, because we're going to do what we're going to do.
I'm writing it down.
I was uncomfortable with it today, so. How far would you think you're gonna hear from them?
Within 2 weeks, I hope. We'll do this.
Yeah, we all hope that, but you can write stuff to MISA, and you don't hear from them for a month and a half, then you hear from them.
I think by your own statement is what underscores my concern, is they're anxious to get the septic system in, so us issuing a negative determination, we relinquish any authority whatsoever, fully knowing there's a natural heritage issue out there.
Well, what-
Could you do one thing and just, see that, if you look at where the septic system is, it's just a tiny corner of the overdig in the 100 feet. And the rest is clearing of the woods. So the clearing behind that really wouldn't matter. That could wait. But getting the septic system in is important before it gets too late in the year. So could you
Well, the other
word
thing-
it in such a way that we could do the system and not any more cutting in the 100-foot until it's wrapped up with MESA?
It's kind of hard to issue a determination on part of the project.
It almost starts to sound like a positive. When you bring
So
all
what I
those
was wondering
conditions.
is, last time this happened, you got Natural Heritage, they wrote the letter saying that they
Yeah.
could issue, that it was fine to issue the decision. So at least if they told us it was fine to issue the negative determination, we could release it? Are you
That's a
fine
good
with that?
idea.
Working out language on an easement, they just were issuing the letter on the
They
take, no
don't,
take.
right now on the, you didn't sign the easement
No,
documentation.
on the subdivision, no.
They just said it was fine for us to issue the order of conditions.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is on that other subdivision, there was no easement in question.
No, there is an easement, but the
Oh,
language
there's
is not
easement over
worked
the whole
out.
thing, yeah.
And it hasn't been written or recorded. It needs to be, but it wasn't done. They just wrote in their letter to us that it was fine to issue the order of conditions, despite that not happening, that they had worked out the area was shown on the plan, and they were working on the language. That's the same case here. If they say to us...
We have something like that for this
Well,
one
that's
as
what
well.
I'm asking him to get.
I can read that for you if you want.
Yeah, if we can get that into the record, then I'm a little more
You have that
comfortable.
on this one or on the
No,
last one?
just the wording on the subdivision was, therefore, it is our opinion that this project meets the state-listed species performance standards for issuance of an order of conditions.
So if we could get them to say
You
that
get them
they...
to say that on this one, get it into the record, and I'm assuming that's going to happen.
Yeah, I
And
can
then
get-
then I'm okay getting the,
Okay.
We can get that done.
So if you
Getting the
issue the
condition in.
negative, I'll get that, and that, I won't release it until I get that from NHESP.
that becomes more binding.
Okay.
Very good. Thanks, Jennifer.
So issue a negative determination,
Number 3 and 6.
excuse me?
Number 3 and 6.
Yeah, for number 3 and 6, I'm sorry about that. And in that, we specifically require a condition that all work be in compliance with Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program documents to be issued, if any. And I think that's it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous.
Abstain.
One
Thank you very
abstention, I'm
much.
sorry.
Did you bring me a copy of that plan, Phil, for the file? A big one? Yeah, can I have that one?
Okay, next one is 1160 Gray Pond Road, Brook School.
Okay, so this is for construction of a new gas line on the southernmost access drive of Brook School. And
That's correct.
let you present.
Good evening. My name is Dan Altabello. I'm here with Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. We've submitted an RDA on behalf of Columbia Gas of Massachusetts for the installation of a new gas line to the Brook School at 1160 Great Pond Road. The wetlands on site were delineated by Brad Holmes in August of 2015. They're generally, as you can see, near the intersection of the driveway and Great Pond Road. In total, we're proposing the installation of approximately 1,100 feet of gas line, which will be installed to provide gas service to the existing science building on site. All work out there will take place within the previously altered existing roadways or their associated shoulders. And as you can see, portions of the work will be done within 100 feet of the wetlands. The installation of this gas line will be done using the open trench method. This consists of opening a trench up approximately 2 to 3 feet wide, approximately 4 feet deep or so, depending on site conditions, installing the gas line within that trench, and then backfilling and compacting. They'll only be installing as much as they can backfill and pave within 1 day, so it'll be all closed up at the end of work each day. And they will patch with pavement every night before work closes. No work will be done during rain events, and no stockpiles will be left overnight. And as I mentioned, at the end of the day, all portions of the trench will be patched. Prior to construction, They will be installing some erosion control measures down gradient of all work, and they will be also installing filter fabrics below any down gradient catch basin grates. That's basically it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jeff?
Yeah, you mentioned that the gas line installation involves 1,100 feet, and then you show on one of the plans that you submitted that that there are, well, A and C series wetlands right up at where you're going to tie in on Great Pond Road. Yep. Are there any other wetlands back, on the site? Yeah, other than these that are shown on the plans?
Brad Holmes, as I mentioned, was out there. He evaluated the entire site. He had the plans of their proposed construction, so he walked the limit of the gas line. He didn't see any other resource areas, vernal pools, natural heritage habitat areas, or flood zones.
So you're alleging there's no other one?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's correct.
And is this, there was a rain garden identified on one of the plans. Is that within 100 feet?
I believe it's just outside of the 100-foot buffer. I think it was more like 140, or I don't have the actual number on at hand, but I believe it was well beyond 100 feet.
Okay, I have no other questions. Yeah, it
Joe?
looks outside.
Over the course of this proposed pipeline, are there any drainage structures? Is there any formal stormwater collection system in the driveway or the campus roadways that they might be crossing?
I did a quick drive down there. I don't recall any, but as
If we were to put a blanket condition on that, if there are any catch basins, to put silt sacks in them and protect them during construction? you
Sure,
would-
we could.
Okay.
We had proposed filter fabric, but silt sacks could work as well.
That's all I have.
My question is at the roadway, is there any measurement from where the pipe is to the wetland? I'm trying to rifle through this stuff, and
I don't think we have that. Basically, it's all within previously altered areas, so it wouldn't be encroaching any closer to the wetlands than the previous alteration.
They're within 25 feet, but they're within existing roadway. I mean, it's developed area. They're not doing any new clearing of vegetated areas.
but I'm just saying, location of the, coming from the street, the farther way, I mean, if they're gonna come from the street, they could do from one side to the other. If they could be from the farther side, if the road's, what's the road, 20 feet?
Yeah, something
So-
about 20 feet or so.
So, I mean, and then you got the wetlands right on it, so, I mean, that's farther away versus going on to, closer to the wetlands. It's a 4-foot dig. Instead of digging on the shoulder closest to the wetland, if they could start, because the pipe runs along Great Pond Road. Why wouldn't they start from the other side of it? And that would give us an extra 20 feet of, when they do the dig, that they're not potentially getting any dirt or silt in there. Then after that, you say there's no wetlands after, I have no issue.
I don't think they'd have a problem with that at all. The only caveat I'd say is if there's some sort of utility existing on one side, which it precludes them from going down that side, that would be the only hiccup on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for us to look. To me, I like plans
Sure.
and know where everything is and elevations and stuff. The drawing is faint at best. So, I mean, I can't even see the roadway on this one here.
Maybe condition that the tie-in point is approved by our administrator?
Well, maybe that the tie-in point is as far from wetland as is feasible to be
Yeah.
approved by administrator.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would work. I mean, like I said, if we can gain feet, it's not inches, it's feet, from working from one side of the road to the other.
absolutely.
Sure.
So I think that's
That wouldn't be
something
a
we
problem
should.
at all.
Okay, thank you.
How long is it going to take this project to be completed?
Usually it's within a week or two. It's usually relatively quick. That assumes, the usual setbacks, et cetera, but typically it goes pretty quickly. They can install between 80 and 100 feet in a day, so they're usually out there going, depending on site conditions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Motion.
So this is to approve as a,
Type 5,
-3 and 5.
3 and 5, right?
yeah, -3 and number 3 bylaw only, and number 5 is their exemption from the state regs.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I move that we issue a -3 determination under our bylaw, and number 5,
The exemption.
WPA exemption for the 1160 Great Pond Road project.
We have the conditions we have to add in, though.
I think it's just pre-construction inspection when the erosion controls are installed, and post when it's stabilized and you're ready to take them out.
So I want to add the silt sacks,
Oh, and-
the
yep,
silt
silt
sacks,
sacks.
and that the proposed gas pipeline corridor be located at the greatest distance away from the wetland as possible. So you can pick that corridor and at the pre-construction and just convince Jen that that's the farthest you can get it away.
Sure.
I amend my motion.
There was a motion, any second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next one is 242-1660, request to continue to 10/21.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242, no file number, 0 High Street.
Good evening. Jeff Andrews from Wetlands Preservation here on behalf of RCG West Mill and A LLC. We filed an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for confirmation of a wetland boundary delineated on this site in September of this year. I think you probably are all familiar with this site. It's located right behind this building on High Street. There's a lot of history out here. What we've delineated with the A series of wetland flags is BVW associated with some existing bank out there. Also delineated out there is bank associated with this BVW that drains into an old railroad ditch that goes out towards Sutton Pond. We did do some test pit work out there because of the disturbance of vegetation. This is basically all a mown ball field, so we couldn't really make a determination based on soil and vegetation with what we had out there. And with the history of fill and removal of fill, we did test pits out there to determine the hydro soil boundary. So that's what we're indicating here. We've delineated basically pretty much all of the outfield as wetland area based on the soil conditions. Also mentioned in the ANRAD filing is a stormwater drainage swale, which is shown here on my plan as a kind of a faint gray line that flows in this direction. Basically, it's conveying stormwater flow from the parking area of the West Mill complex. They recently did some upgrades that were outside of any jurisdiction in replacing some catch basins with some deep catch basin sumps and hoods. I've done a little bit of research on the kind of the history of things here in the drainage system, and it appears that back in 1988 there was some work done on this swale because of flooding issues to the property on Sutton Street. So it looks like it maybe was kind of graded out, so it wasn't as steep sloped as it tends to be down in this direction along the original rail ditch, I guess I will call it. think at this point, I've walked it with Jen, we've looked at the boundary. I will say, I think actually this appears to be a basin that was constructed as well at some point in time. Not calling it a stormwater basin, but it doesn't appear to take any flow from the parking area here. It basically is taking some sheet flow from the residential lots along here, and then there's a swale that has silted in over the years that collects flow and drains down in this direction towards the pond. So with that, I guess I'll just open it up to questions.
Thank you. Jack?
So you've looked at this line, Jen?
I looked at the line. We didn't do any digging out in the field. They sort of took their word on it. They didn't have a backhoe out there that day, so
Yeah.
they've delineated well up into what you would look at and probably call wetland. But the soils are what proof that out. So, but we did walk the rest of the line. I tried to research the history on that swale. There isn't a lot in the file. There was some kind of proposal to do something there. There was an enforcement order. There was a withdrawal of the DEP file, of the NOI. So there's some new corrugated pipe there. But that's about all the information. There was a 1988 determination that said it was non-jurisdictional when it was a swale along the railroad bed. That obviously doesn't carry any weight today, but it was just another piece of information that was out there.
Okay. Looks like it, if I'm remembering this parcel correctly, it looks like part of it is pretty obvious, and some of it, like the outfield portion, seems to be based on augering. I mean,
Right.
is that-
Yeah, you wouldn't walk out there and guess, if it were
Yeah.
let to go wild, the frag would probably grow all the way across the field. It's on the edge of the field.
I'm trying to get to how confident are you in the
Oh, and the rest of the delineation, I don't have concerns. It's just, you have photos of what the swale looks like.
No more questions.
Joe?
So, once we have a line, what's the intent? Is the ball field still currently used? Is it abandoned?
It's currently mown, yeah. I don't know if it's used, the client is here, I don't know if it's utilized at all, but it is maintained as.
So once we make a determination that it is in fact wetland, is it going to be stop using the ball field and stop maintaining it?
I wouldn't see any reason to do that. It's not sort of,
Which begs the bigger question. They're not just coming in here to get a line out of curiosity.
well, they're going to do some planning, and that's
Yeah.
its use as a ball field.
And it's just a property, it's not a town ball field, it's not
We
used.
currently mow some golf course in town, that's wetland,
Sure, sure.
No, it's owned by the property owner, and they maintain it as a ball field. Does it get used at all?
Yeah, you talked to, it's been a private ball field. Let our tenants and sometimes other people use those fields, used very infrequently. And yeah, the intent is to, as we're doing master planning for the site, figure out the dynamics that would be involved with planning out more buildings or
And
parking.
that's, what I'm trying to do is that, once we make a determination, we're saying it's a wetland, and it's going to kind of set the destiny of how it continues to be used in the future, regardless of your planning aspect. So I want to be careful that you're cognizant to that. And moreover, is kind of following up on Jack's questions of Jen, is that they took great efforts to get out there and dig test pits to prove the hydric soils, but in the end, if it's been highly altered, and in the end, if we were let to go fallow, it would just simply revert to probably Phragmites and not high-quality resource area. Again, we don't want to separate quality of resource, but nonetheless, it wouldn't be a great breeding ground for habitat.
Well, lots of things could happen out there. I think Jeff hypothesized that since that swale, someone was probably obviously trying to drain the field at one point, keep the water channelized. As that's filled in, the water's more frequently made its way out, not moving as quickly off the site and staying on the site longer, causing the hydric soils. You can go round and round. They removed, what was in there?
There was slag originally
Yeah.
put in there, and at some point in time, there was there was an approval to do that. Again, at that point in time, I don't think any of this was delineated as jurisdictional wetlands. And they removed the slag, but they removed it to a point, there's basically a hard pan out there. So what they did was they backfilled it after removing the slag with anywhere from 6 inches to 24 inches of loam material. So that's why you have those hydrant conditions in there. You've got compaction of that topsoil with the high groundwater. So
Okay, I understand how the line was achieved, but
Okay, like I said, I'm just curious why they're doing it, because of the 25's right through the middle of the ball field.
gonna put it out of commission.
Yeah? Okay. Deb? Doug? Motion?
I don't know if there's anyone who wants to
Is there any
comment or-
butters here? I'm sorry. We have no butters.
So the, oh, right, we have to continue.
Have to continue anyways. Okay.
I guess, and what about the swale? You're just considered a stormwater feature that they'll deal with when they come back with future
Yeah.
planning, or?
Because if they're gonna try to develop it, that's gonna be part of it anyways.
Okay.
So with that part I'm missing, the swale that you showed earlier, that exactly.
That picture.
Do you think that, I mean, that is resource? It's got enough height?
Well, I mean, it clearly has soils and would have vegetation. It's mowed also.
It has hydrology.
And has hydrology, right, but it's clearly coming out of a pipe, you know. There have been instances when you've taken jurisdiction over things like that, and
So do we need to make a distinction that we're ruling upon the line shown and only the line shown? And that our determination doesn't account for any other resource areas that may be out there? Or are you saying that by
Well, I
taking
think-
this action with a negative is gonna,
that's not, they're declaring that it's not a
Right,
resource
that is-
area.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is our position in our filing in the ANRAD, is that this is non-jurisdictional. That's why it was not delineated, because we're considering it to be part of the stormwater management system.
and I'm
Well,
comfortable with that.
Well, because when we look
I know,
at
again,
the-
sometimes we've done it and sometimes we haven't, you're right.
Well, most often it's been in systems where we know it was built within jurisdictional wetland that was previously there. So on subdivisions where the applicant way back when used part of the resource area to connect their drainage to it. And then we've taken jurisdiction over the whole thing. This, when you look back at the prior plans, doesn't show any resource area on the plans.
Right.
I mean, obviously, this has always run along the railroad bed and gone to the
We have
pond.
this discussion along the railroad bed a lot these days, it seems.
Right.
It's up and down the railroad bed, it's there and it's not there at various reaches of the path. And, you know, whether it crosses areas and pipes or not, I guess it almost, what's the difference? In other areas, we have it as a resource area.
You're thinking, right, along the
Harkaway.
back of Harkaway.
Exactly where I'm thinking.
Right, except there isn't a discharge from a pipe there. The water just sits and is.
But the discharge of the pipe is only because of other improvements that were made around it. Back in the day when the railroad was there, that ditch that ran the length of the railroad probably. I'm trying to just, if we need to make a distinction, I want to be clear that there's a reasoning behind it. But if we're ruling in many instances that these ditches that hold watering have soils and would revert to vegetation if we stop maintaining them are in fact resource areas, we ought to be consistent on that. And I think we should take jurisdiction on it, especially where it connects to this bigger network. I don't want to be argumentative, but I want to be consistent with some of these other decisions we've reached.
We had the same discussion today, but when we went up past filings, it wasn't designated as a wetland. So,
In 88.
well, no, 88, well, when they did that pipe, they must have did it, when was the ball field put in? 90s?
It was in the 90s, yeah, based on some of the aerial.
Well,
photographs
the
that
as-built
looked
shows
at.
it as being, I have the as-built from 88 that shows it
Oh, it was
installed.
Oh, yeah, I remember the ball field as a kid.
Yeah, we have the as-built from the 80s that shows the ball field.
That was the ball field was in the, but that pipe must have been put in, that wasn't put in the 80s.
That
That
was
pipe
there.
from, based on what I've looked at for historical aerials, has, well, there has always been a swale there of some kind. And I think it was probably originally the rail ditch, and like I said, it was broadened at some point and made part of the current stormwater management system.
I just wanted to say, I was just reminded by my colleague that there were a number of improvements that happened in the late 90s. That's when that pipe went in. So we've looked at air photos from different snapshots in time of the evolution of the way they did the stormwater management out there. And, I think that point about, why did we go out and look at the whole ball, we've basically taken a whole ball field that we're using and called it a wetland and try to be, as conservative as possible about where we can go or not go and what areas we can use for stormwater management and future possible development of the site. And I think, our understanding is areas that were created and maintained as, man-made stormwater management areas that were not previously jurisdictional are areas we are hoping would not now become jurisdictional and affect our ability to develop the site and do stormwater management in the future as we do that.
A question about the drainage swale. Isn't it constructive? Doesn't the drainage swale work better when vegetation is maintained, that woody vegetation doesn't spring up in it?
Well, that's part of the discussion
That it be maintained like
that
they're
Jeff has
doing?
in his reason to exempt it would be that if it was constructed post-96 and maintained as drainage, then it has an exemption under, the DEP regulations, stormwater regulations. So that's why I was kind of pushing them to find out when the drainage was constructed. It's obvious it's maintained that way, but it's sort of whether you take jurisdiction over or not has something to do with the time it was created.
It just seems to me if it's functioning as a stormwater management structure, as a swale, and it's being maintained and it's effective now, I don't know why we would want to change that. And I think if we would prevent mowing, then it would function differently eventually with the growth of vegetation.
That's what I.
We're not preventing maintenance.
But if we defined it as a wetland, we might do that, right?
No,
We'd still mow.
again, we didn't do that on, we just had the filing for the sport court there out on Bear Hill. The drainage was jurisdictional, constructed on the edge of and slightly into a wetland in the 80s.
Yeah.
And maintained as a stormwater structure with no buffer zones, but still delineated as wetland.
Okay. What's the point?
Well, my take on it was, when I talked to Jen about it today, if they do develop it at some point, that's still gonna be a factor in their stormwater for the site. So we'd still have some jurisdiction over it at some point, to keep it as the same,
Because it's a structure.
right?
But, I mean, it is a structure. If you look at the definition of stormwater in the regulations, I mean, this is clearly a swale that was constructed to convey stormwater flow from a stormwater system. And that's, conveyance of stormwater, that's exactly what this does. So,
We also, you wouldn't give up jurisdiction on the one on Old Farm. Remember the guy put in the pool and the catch basin discharged behind his house, and I said, you just took jurisdiction over the work, not the swale, but you didn't want to call the swale not jurisdictional. I just want to make sure we're consistent, because it's going to be difficult we need to decide one way or another. I think this sort of hinges on when that was constructed and why, I think would be helpful.
Well, I think what they said was constructed in the 80s, but improvements were made in the 90s.
Late 90s.
well, I think the filing in 88 was I think it was an RDA that was submitted for emergency work because there was flooding issues on the property on Sutton Street, I believe. So
I kind of lose track of what happened after that,
The
but,
commission required the filing of an NOI. Some
Right.
part of an NOI was filed, but then additional details weren't provided, and then it was withdrawn.
right.
What's not making sense there is if there was flooding on Sutton Street or a property on Sutton Street, it must have been the old Laidlaw site, exactly, parallel to the railroad.
It was, yeah, Benny Osgood, I guess, is the
Yeah.
name that's come up.
What doesn't make sense there is, and that used to flood down there a lot, mostly on Particular Brook though. But any improvement to the swale to send more water down faster, it's only gonna make matters worse down there. So short of damming it up and creating detention, you're not dredging it out, makes things worse.
Yeah. I don't know the history.
So yeah, I think we're speculating on what the purpose. But in this 88 master plan, the master site drawing here, it does show what up gradient of the swale we're talking about is 24-inch RCP,
Right.
goes to daylight, goes to a swale, goes back into another 18-inch pipe, goes back to daylight in a swale, right up in the corner where all of that ties together, which is no longer a pipe, according to your plan.
It is no longer a pipe.
So at some point in time, someone dug out a pipe,
Yeah.
maybe as a result of that other flooding issue.
Yeah, and I think there was actually a berm constructed down somewhere in this location.
And that never finds its way back into Cochicua Brook. It eventually gets into a pipe and past beyond the back of Laidlaw and
Yeah.
No, it gets into Cochicua
It's
Brook if
brook.
it flows to the
In Sutton
ponds.
Pond.
Yeah.
It goes to the pond from there, so,
And the brook flows through the pond, so.
right.
We
That
can-
pipe,
Well, we have
if
to
there's no,
continue anyway.
yeah, I think we continue it anyway, and let's do a little more research. If there's not another pipe downstream from here, and it connects to the pond and it ties into this network, I think we'd be hard pressed not to call it a resource. Up to the pipe, and then anything in the pipe above is clearly stormwater. But I think what you're looking at is a remnant of what was an original waterway back when the railroad went in, and
Well, I don't think you would say that if you saw this area down in here. I mean, there's some pretty high velocities that come out down through this swale, and this is basically a scoured trench ditch. I mean, it's a mess in there, so it's by no means natural.
I think also it should be noted, the way the railroad works, it followed the Cochicua Brook coming down till it hits these properties, and turns was given more upland land by these owners as it heads out toward Sutton Street. So it wasn't necessarily going down, like a lot of them were down a riverbed in that area. And you see the construction of that, and he's right, the flow of the water was around the ball field, so now it's been pulled into the ball field by that compaction there. But this stormwater management, I think, was related more to construction or modifications to the parking lots. And the flooding was actually coming back from the Sutton Pond condominiums, I think is what happened at that time, not coming down from the Laidlaw site there. It does have a complicated, we read through some of the filings and did some, trying to figure out exactly what they were thinking when they did all these things, because they've created a little bit of a mess of it. But, our hope is that, if we choose to develop out there, which is our hope to clean things up, that moving around stormwater management and keeping wetlands and their proper things is part of what we need to be able to do to make the next phase work.
okay, we need to wait for the number anyway, so give us another couple weeks for us to think about it, contemplate it, and gather up any additional info.
I can have
I'm
some
okay with questioning.
discussion with DEP too about it.
Let Doug know that. And see if he has any questions.
Find out when it was constructed too. If we can.
Do we need a motion to continue? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next meeting is when? Thank you. 21st. Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right. Next one is 242 North number 70 Wally Tavern.
Those are labeled, copies, but they're all the same. This is for replacement of a septic system, 70 Raleigh Tavern. I reviewed the resource area delineation and didn't have any issues. There's a few things going on, some brush dumping and some debris accumulation behind the shed. But other than that, the delineation was fine, and the work is all more than 50 feet, but within the 100-foot, so I believe there were some Board of Health waivers required. I don't know if you have anything to add, Walter?
No, we live on a wonderful town. And haven't had a problem till now. So that's what we need. My wife is here.
What's wrong?
Well, it's just me.
Okay.
These
Sit down.
volunteers.
Sit
It's
down,
work.
sit down.
Sorry?
What do you want to know?
We'll just have some, might have some questions. Jack, you have any questions?
I don't. I like the setbacks on this project, the nature of the project. The only condition that I would recommend would be cleanup of the debris.
The brush pile.
Oh, yes, the people that mow our lawn now, we don't know if they've been piling it in a place that was not appropriate. And I've already started moving it. And it will definitely be moved. Anything that is inappropriate, we will take care of.
It's the only condition that comes to mind for me, and I've got no other questions.
Joe?
Yeah, it looks to be a very straightforward and routine, septic system replacement, and everything they're proposing is certainly something we would allow. There's a waiver with Board of Health.
Did the Board of Health already approve?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, if the existing septic's failed, everybody's going to work to put a new one in to make sure it, to improve water quality. So-
Yeah, it has not failed exactly. It's old, though, and, we
Yeah,
don't want it to fail in December. It's time since.
Probably a paper failure, not a realistic failure.
Well, we bought the house in 1969, and
It's the original system.
It's been a long time.
So it looks pretty straightforward. In the things that happen on a house of this age, with the landscape, is nothing to get upset about. Those things happen. It's just, the time to get it cleaned up is when you've got equipment in here doing this type of work.
Yes.
So this is a good time to address it.
I think the past 3 septic systems we've had have all had some kind of brush pile that needed to be removed. It's pretty straightforward at this point.
I wish there was a wetland in my yard, because my wife would be happy to have you guys order me to get my pile out of my yard. Just because it's in the way. But yeah, it's straightforward. All set.
Doug?
We need a number?
We have to continue, so what we'll do is we'll continue,
We'll draft the
and
order.
we'll draft the order, so at the next meeting, if your numbers come in, then you'll be all set.
So the people that
From
do
the
digging and
DEP.
all,
No, they can't do anything yet.
until,
You have to get your DEP number.
We're waiting on some paperwork from the state. We're all set. It's just a matter of waiting till the next meeting for us to issue the actual paperwork.
So if you have your number by the next meeting, your decision will already be here, and then they can start after.
So it'll be 2 weeks until we get the DEP number. You mailed everything to DEP, right? Like Heidi had helped you with. So as soon as we get that number, we'll be able to write the order. And then we'll issue the order on the 21st. And then you have to wait 10 days before you can start the work. But we can get you started with erosion control and all that kind of thing in that time period.
Okay.
Okay.
And you don't need to come to the next meeting. It's just
Right.
going to be us
Issuing.
dealing with it.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next one is 242-6195 Lions Way.
Sorry?
So I did review this delineation. And report, I think, did we have a conversation afterwards? We did, or did I, couldn't remember if I just emailed you. Sort of to the top of the page where the wetland heads off to the north, I think there's additional wetland which may cast a buffer zone onto the driveway. It's still within the 100-foot buffer zone, and I don't think the 25 or the 50 come that way. You'll also see in the photos, which I haven't given you yet, that it does look a bit like there might be an ephemeral pool out there.
Leaf litter was suggested, huh?
But other than that, the delineation is correct. It could change the buffer zones, but I'll let the applicant give you the rundown on the proposal.
My name is Maureen Harold from North Environmental Services, here on behalf of my client. We filed a notice of intent to raise the deck at the rear of the dwelling to construct a single-family addition, a garage with a deck on top as well. To let the commission know, the site is within natural heritage endangered species. It's within their mapped area. We sent the application to them. I think most of the work is actually exempt by some of their exemptions, but regardless, the application is into them. There's also an interesting note to this property, is there's a drainage easement behind the proposed addition. This lot came in front of the commission, I want to say in the early 2000s or so. There was actually a detention pond at the rear of this dwelling, and the applicant came in, the homeowner came in and proposed it to be underground, and the commission had granted that. And the outlet for this detention pond is around A9, A10 in that area there.
That's also the outlet for the other detention pond. It's piped underground through the backyard, if you look at the original plans.
Right, so the B series wetland, you can see on your plan, that's actually a detention pond as well. So we do have drainage for the subdivision, does outlet into this A series wetland that's shown on the property. Jen did inform me of the ephemeral pool habitat. I haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it. I know you had noted around certain flag numbers, but I don't recall which ones.
It would largely, because it's straight back off the site, it's going to be 100 feet from the edge of the depression, so it's going to encompass a lot of the site. I mean, it's a pretty large area.
Okay. So around, I just want to go out and take a look, if you remember.
I mean, it's straight back.
Okay.
Right where you go in, right where the outlet is, if you head back in that direction. It's not to the, I wouldn't say it's over by A1, 2, 3, 4. What looks like that large ephemeral pool is probably back behind A11,
Okay.
12, in that area.
Okay. So I know obviously if it is an ephemeral pool habitat, your dimensional setbacks do increase. However, I do think it's somewhat unique because there is a detention pond underground here, and it does outlet into this area. And I don't know if that would be taken into consideration or...
Jack, any questions?
It sounds like the drainage pipes entering the A-series wetlands were put there when the A-series was not considered a ephemeral pool.
Well, we've had this happen on at least 3 sites since I've worked here, where you started off with, it happened on Thistle and it happened on Nutmeg, where 2 pools went in, both of which had ephemeral pools in the backyard that weren't identified at the time of the subdivision, whether they didn't exist at the time of the subdivision or, you know, I think we worked on one of those. I think that you had the Nutmeg one or the Thistle, 95 Thistle.
Right, and I would imagine outletting drainage may contribute to it as well.
It certainly enlarged the wetland. There was always an intermittent stream and some kind of larger wetland area back there, but the line on the previous plan is nowhere as close to the, you know, limit of clearing as it is now.
Okay.
So there's obviously more water back there than there was before, but it doesn't give us any indication of whether there was this ephemeral pool habitat or not, but it certainly could have increased the amount of water and the amount of time it stays there in the spring.
Well, it looks like the proposal meets the no-build zone setbacks if they're considered regular wetlands.
Right, and so I think what happened on these other projects where the pool was found well after the house and everything was constructed was you allowed them to do it with some mitigation on both projects. I believe you allowed construction between the 50 and the 75, but required mitigation, if that's how this plays out.
Would it be practical to make that determination like within the next 2 weeks, whether it is an ephemeral pool or not?
Absolutely. I haven't had an opportunity to go out and take a look at it, and from the photographs, it does look like it, but I did just want to go out and see. So that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
So, Chad, just to be more clear for myself, the wetland line for the BBW, you're clear on?
Yep.
There's no question. You think the ephemeral pool is within the line but further away? And the question becomes, is depending on how far away it is, it might affect the no-build, 75 versus 50.
It's not far enough away to not affect this project.
So it's near the line.
Right.
So you basically could lose an additional 25 feet.
It's
So I think it's
within
imperative
100 feet.
that we know if it's an ephemeral pool before we go too much further. My question on practicality, I do remember the stormwater detention areas coming in as a modification to go underground.
It was a full-blown NOI to put it underground. They put in infiltration chambers, which then outletted in the same area as the prior detention basin.
Town-owned and maintained?
I didn't look whether Lions Way is an exception.
So my question becomes,
Well, let's just say the detention basin, the series, is it B? The B series is not maintained. It's a forested detention basin.
It's pretty thick.
so my question becomes is, the house and the proposed improvements are outside of the easement, and those structures are within the easements.
The easement's actually shown on the plan. It's a dashed line. It's a little tricky to see. but
Is it
drainage
this?
easement.
It's this, right?
That's correct. So all the work is proposed outside of the drainage easement.
And anything that they're proposing doesn't hinder access to that, because they would still be able to get down within this easement line to do any maintenance in the future if need be.
Yes.
And those infiltration, we say underground, are they chambers or are they just
Yeah, I
infiltrators?
believe it's chambers. Hold out the...
I'd like to know where the structures are, because when they're digging the foundation for the addition, we need to know, I mean, let's say the chamber is right up on the easement line, precautions, great precautions need to be made.
I'm sure an as-built, I was just gonna say, I'm sure an as-built plan was created.
Okay, so it's well within the easement, so it's not going to be anywhere near the line, that's great. So let's assume the ephemeral pool isn't going to have a catastrophic effect on the proposal here. So you're digging pretty good-sized foundation excavation. Does this addition have a basement beneath it, or is this going to be a frost wall and just a slab on grade?
I can check that for you. I don't have the architectural plans to know
What
for sure.
I'm trying to understand is what's the, how much stockpile of material are we looking at? Or is this going to be a net loaded into a truck and take it away? Because we're going to need to see where it is you're going to propose to store the soils. Right now, that's not being shown.
I mean, it's something we could store in front of the house, even as unsightly as that would be for the neighborhood. It's something we could provide. It would be slightly within the buffer zone to the B series wetland, but obviously far away.
Right, so when you come back, if you could let us know whether it's a full basement or
Okay.
not,
Sure.
and then propose a soil stockpile area, kind of based on what the answer to that question
Okay.
is.
I can show that on the plan.
I'm all set.
Good. Second. All those in
Is there
favor say-
anyone in the, I don't know if there's anyone in the audience.
I'm sorry, do any of us to this project, Lions Farm?
No, okay, sorry.
Okay. Next, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
So,
Aye.
okay,
Opposed?
so,
That's
okay,
unanimous. Thank you.
Does this continue for 2 weeks? Okay.
Right, next one is 242, no number, 240 Charles Street, Lawrence Sanitation District. Is that,
Sorry.
would normally this have to be read, Jen, or normally?
We're not reading them anymore.
All right, okay,
Doug says no.
good. Works for me.
We got copies.
Good evening. I'm Richard Wheeler. I'm with the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, Capital Projects Manager. I just wanted to take a moment and introduce the project. I have with me John Rico from CDM Smith Engineers and Mary Rimmer. They've been hired by the district. This project is at our Riverside Pumping Station, which is at the end of North Main Street and Riverview Street. The station was built in the mid-'70s and became operational in 1977. So it's 38 years old, and it's time for a rehab. We have two goals on the project. One was a long-term control plan filed with Mass DEP and the EPA. And the long-term control plan is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Merrimack River by increasing the flow capability at this pumping station. The pumping station has 4 pumps in it. 2 of them are 1,250 horsepower pumps and 2 of them are 800 horsepower pumps. And majority of the work will be done inside the pumping station to increase the flow. Our other goal is a energy efficiency situation to allow the station to operate more efficiently. Presently, the first pump to go on is a 1,250 horsepower pump, and by changing out the pump inside the building and some different control schemes, we're going to be able to use an 800 horsepower pump most of the time instead of a 1250. A net savings to our member communities, of which North Andover is one of them, of around $240,000 a year in electric savings, and approximately 1.7 million kilowatt hours of electrical savings associated with the 240,000. Our other goal here is being almost a 40-year-old pumping station. Electrical items get old and not as reliable as they should be. So although most of the work is inside the pumping station, there is some outside work of replacing some old transformers and some switchgear out there. And that's the reason why we're coming before you with the NOI is the outside work. So I'm going to turn this over to our consultants, and they can tell you about the project.
So the wetlands on this site are essentially the bank to the Merrimack River, so the riverfront area, and bordering land subject to flooding. CDM flagged the site in May, and Jennifer had a chance to take a look at that wetland delineation a couple of weeks ago, and I think that was pretty straightforward. There really isn't any bordering vegetated wetlands. It's a steep slope. We all know where the bank is there. And the site is within, as I said, the 200-foot riverfront area. Most of that riverfront area is previously developed with existing parking area. So the proposed concrete pad to house the new facility, the new structures, will be on the other side, on the landward side of the parking area. So there's a parking area between the river and the proposed work. There will be work to remill the actual parking area itself, but there is no increase in the size of the parking area. There's a very small increase in the total impervious surface area for the project to construct the concrete pad for the new pumps. And I think that totals 35 square feet, because some of that is going to be reused from existing conditions. And before I turn it over to John, I just wanted to also mention briefly that this project qualifies for some exemptions under the State Wetlands Protection Act. As a regional wastewater treatment facility, it's exempt for the portions of work that are within riverfront area. It's not exempt for the portions of work that are within bordering land subject to flooding. There's a very small portion of work that occurs within the 100-year floodplain that John will describe, but essentially it's some temporary disturbance for installation of the electrical duct bank and some replanting of some landscape trees for screening. So all that is sort of temporary alteration, but we did file with Mass DEP as well, because it's one of those funny projects where it sort of has multiple layers of exemptions and limited project status, but yet it doesn't quite fully exempt itself from the Wetlands Protection Act. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to John.
I'm sorry, I can't find what I did with their digital file. Even though you did send it to me, I've lost it.
Okay, basically what we sent you was here anyways. As she mentioned earlier, well, I guess as Richard's mentioned earlier, most of the work for this project is inside of the building, but as a result of that work, we're going to need a new switchgear and new transformers outside. To construct this new switchgear, we're going to need a new pad that's going to be adjacent to the existing switchgear pad. And to offset that, when it's I guess completed, we'd be demoing the existing portion of the pad, netting in an impervious increase of about 35 square feet. As she said, the temporary disturbance is going to be it's a 6-inch deep layer of crushed stone, and that's going to be for the it's going to be where the temporary generator will be located. The generator will be used strictly as a backup, just in case one of the transformers goes down during construction. It will have a double wall containment tank And like I said, hopefully it never gets used. The other temporary alterations are for these electrical duct banks. They'll be going in, they're about 2 feet deep, and everything that's disturbed is going to be loamed and seeded when it's completed. So,
Jack, any questions?
I can take questions if.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned transformers on the new switchgear pad.
Transformers will be replacing where they're located on the existing pad.
You'll have new transformers?
New transformers, yeah.
Okay.
So currently, the existing transformers are shown here and here.
Yep.
The new transformers are going to be just off to the side. And we can install one at a time, because we don't need both transformers at once. However, we need to construct the switchgear before the existing switchgear that gets demolished.
Okay, good. So the transformers aren't on the same pad same location as the new switchgear?
Correct.
Okay. There's a lot of notes on there, so I'll ask you. It's probably on there. What is in between the resource area and those two transformers? It's sort of polka dotted. Is that like that's the old
polka dotted? This here?
Yeah.
This is the area that's hatched. This is what is going to be demolished. So this is where the existing switchgear is located.
Okay.
So after the new one gets constructed, we'll be demolishing this pad.
The oil inside the transformers, do you know what that is? Is it vegetable oil or?
I don't know.
PCBs or something? Is it contained?
It's not PCBs.
I know it isn't.
40 years.
Do you have like containment in that area? In case there is a failure, that the oil couldn't migrate at all out of the pad?
I believe it is contained. I can double check.
These are pad mount transformers with lifting hooks, right?
Yes.
You just de-energize, disconnect the feeds, and it should lift out. Rupture.
If they have a leak somehow.
Yeah.
The oil would not be a good thing for the riverfront. Switchgear, just conventional, 480 volt.
It's going to be, it's completely enclosed.
Yeah.
The new switchgear that's going in there. Okay. It'll be a walk-in enclosure.
You mentioned the double containment on the diesel generator. Is that for the fuel tank?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like as I said, it's just going to be temporary.
It's a double-walled tank, is what it is. Yeah. I have no more questions.
Okay. You talked about, it's really just semantics. Underground duct banks and whatnot, those are permanent alterations, even though they're temporary surface disturbances. You're gonna just be restoring the top, but those banks will be in there for forever. Where is the resource area line? Is it that heavy dashed meandering line that I'm looking at?
The 100.
Or is that?
100 foot. Yeah.
There's a 200-foot roof line area and a 100-foot roof line area.
And this kind of heavy line, this is the 100-year floodplain.
So that's floodplain that I'm
Yes.
looking at?
Floodplain here.
Okay.
So the river is down here.
Okay, so all of this is out of floodplain?
It's except for a very small part of the duct bank installation.
Yep.
The duct bank itself, that's it,
Right,
yeah.
some grading, and then there'll be some landscape planting that isn't shown on this plan, but I think 11 trees.
How much time do you?
Yes.
So where's the Santa, where'd he go? There he is. Where is this in scheduling in your plan? So, once you get the permits, what's your most optimistic time of when you'd put it out to bid and start the construction?
We're hoping to put it out to bid this January and start construction before April. And it's a 32-month construction period.
So you've answered my question. When the river is most vulnerable to flooding, and feeling that 100, why would you be doing it then? Why is this not a project that we'd be talking about us conditioning happening in August, prior to hurricane season? Because, we've all seen how that river comes up in the floodplain, and we've seen it exceed the 100-year level.
In 2006, we had the 100-year flood level of the river, and it
we've had
just
5
barely,
since then.
just barely got up to our gate and not into the electrical equipment pad or into the building. So it was probably 3 or 4 feet elevation-wise, but probably 25 feet away from the building. And so
Let me ask the question
we
this
are aggressive in our schedule. We can't really go any quicker. The reason for the 32 months is because of the work being done in the pumping station.
You said 32?
32 months.
Oh, wow, I thought you were saying 2 to 3 months, I'm
No,
sorry.
32 months.
32 months.
Inside.
Inside, yeah.
So
Most of the work is taking a pump out for rehabilitation.
That's right.
So,
So, and getting parts for the pump. And certainly getting a new transformer, new switchgear takes a while as well. So,
So you thought,
the project is being funded through the DEP SRF program, and their funding isn't really available until January or February, by the time the trust does their financing, and then they are required us to be under contract before April 30th to get some of the grant funds in the program from the environmental
Right, and-
justice communities.
believe it or not, we're in the same business, so I actually understand everything you just said. Maybe the public at home doesn't, but I know how the bureaucracy works. And the question is, I think you could hit all of the underwriting requirements, still start with all your mechanicals internally. My concern would be, and I think it sounds like it's doable, would be to do any of the exterior work in the drier months in the summertime when the river's not vulnerable. And I think it gives you the opportunity to get, even if it's not just this summer, maybe in fact it's next summer. And it gives you a chance to get all your interior internal mechanicals done, and because you do that first, you get the lower horsepower.
It's kind of a concurrent type of thing, because right now we have 2 electrical feeds, separate electrical feeds in there, and every once in a while we do lose 1 power feed. And that's why we have a generator, temporary generator planned for there in case we lose both electrical feeds. But phasing of the work and the requires the electrical work to be done in the stages that the pumps are being done in. But we can certainly look at your suggestion, and I think a lot of that is probably true. I don't have the schedule right with me, but or at least the anticipated schedule, but we could certainly look at that.
And really, the thing that's the most vulnerable is the generator, and it's a temporary location for a skid-mounted generator sitting on stone. I mean, is there any other place?
It'll probably be a trailer-mounted unit.
Trailer mounted?
So it'll be up high.
And the pad itself is 2 feet above the flood elevation, so.
Right. Yeah, we've actually had the pad designed higher than the existing pad. So.
And also, the bulk of the work in the riverfront area is milling and resurfacing of the parking area, which certainly can be done at another time of year.
Okay. I got enough information for this first pass-through. Thanks.
Okay, we need a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And we're still waiting to hear from Natural Heritage as well, right?
Natural Heritage is a file number. Is there any other information that you need for the next meeting?
I don't think so. Anything you think?
So I'll probably draft something for the next meeting as well?
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably be there?
Yep. Thank you. Give me a second here. All right. Next one is 242-1656, 95 Old Cartway.
So you have in front of you the alternatives analysis. I guess at this point, what I
Which is that
didn't,
series of letters?
right, I didn't receive a revised plan, and I'm not sure which plan we're going back to. The one, I don't know when you, what the date you submitted. I'm not really sure from your alternatives analysis, you're not going with the plan you submitted at the last hearing.
According to engineers, that's not very practical. So it would be the preceding plan.
I don't know when that, maybe August 26th. I don't know which one this is. No, that's not the right one.
Well, I stand corrected.
I think it's this one is the one you're saying?
No, that's the prior plan that was submitted. What I'm proposing to do is I'm requesting a waiver to allow the stairway that construction was started on to remain, and moving the rest of it, the tub, everything else, to the location which was depicted on the plan that was last submitted to the commission.
Well, this is the only other plan that I have of what was proposed.
Yeah, I don't think we ever saw a plan. The other one you had talked about was, I think, this plan, but you were taking the lower deck and the jacuzzi deck
And moving
off of
it to the new location depicted on the plan that was just up there.
All right, so we can't deal with a hybrid. What we need is the plan that we're going to be asked to consider, right? It's somewhere between the two, but we don't have that plan. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
That's it.
it's, I didn't realize I had to have a depiction of that. I was here for an alternative analysis. I didn't realize it was necessary to provide. I can provide a plan if the commission is receptive to that, to
the alternatives analysis?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, at some point, we need the plan for the record, whatever it is we're going to be voting on. So based on the discussion we have tonight, it's likely, if it's going to differ from anything we already have on file, it's going to require a revised plan to depict that final proposal you're making.
Understood. But just for the sake of discussion
the
this
one to use?
evening, the prior, if I could ask Jennifer to put the prior plan up, it would,
The prior plan was one with the landing and the jacuzzi, correct?
correct, but,
That was the original one.
right,
Thought.
there has to be a landing at the bottom of the stairway, and moving the decking around three sides, or two sides of the tub, moving the tub out of there into the area that's depicted on the plan that was submitted last time, which is out of the no-build zone.
The problem is we can't vote on a plan that we don't have. I thought when you were coming, we would have known, we would have.
Yeah, but so we're not getting a vote tonight. We're going to have a discussion on the alternatives analysis, so he's at a point where we have an earlier version. We have the one we saw at the most recent meeting, and so now this discussion is going to somehow maybe be somewhere between the two of those, and whether we're receptive to that discussion or not is going to determine what he submits to us. And when we
Correct.
get that plan, that's when we vote. So this is the closest depiction that we should use for that discussion?
Minus most of that lower deck. other than a landing. And the, you know, the area on which the stairway and the landing are presently in early construction stage, that area has been, since the house was built in 1995, a pre-existing disturbed area. I can assure you that if I knew that that was within the no-build, none of the construction that has taken place would have taken place. I can assure you that I love and respect nature and the environment as much as anyone on this commission, but what has been disturbed, again, as it was disturbed during the construction of the home, is disturbed, and removing, digging out footings that required a backhoe to get in there, mini backhoe to dig out, I think would, and redisturbing it, in the opinion of environmental, I don't know if you'd call them experts, but people that I've talked with, would actually create more disturbance of the, an impact on the wetlands than leaving it alone. So I'm hoping that I can serve the purpose of providing safety for my family, and I'm happy. I could care less where the hot tub is. And obviously, in the beginning, I would prefer not to rip out and remove everything that I've already started constructing, but I'm hoping to find a happy medium here that both the Conservation Commission and my family can live with.
Can you rotate that?
Can't on here.
What's that?
I can't rotate the plan on the.
That's the one, that's the first one.
I have more copies of it as well.
Here it is. This is the one.
The other one's closer to what he's asking for, though. Smaller landing, fewer stairs.
No, he says he wants to put the jacuzzi there now.
No, I don't. I don't.
Oh, you want it out?
I don't care where it goes. I'm happy to move it wherever you want. I just want to get.
The other one had it outside the 50, I think.
Yes.
The other plan had it outside the 50.
We shouldn't even be looking at this.
We should, yeah.
Well,
Be looking at the
that
other
represents the stairway, where
How it is now.
I would.
The other one doesn't have
The other,
the stairway?
this one represents where the stairway would be. The other one represents where the hot tub would be moved to.
But there was a landing on the other one, a smaller landing that
Which
encroached
is,
less.
according to, after I had an engineer, forgive me, environmental engineer, is that the term? He drew that up. When I took it to a structural engineer, he said, good luck.
Oh, it wouldn't work, all right. So it's going to be different than that other one. All right. Well, the other one had an encroachment into the 50-foot no-build.
Still does.
They both do.
Yeah. So that
So
one we
yeah.
need to talk about.
Well, yes, he's asking for a waiver.
But we don't know how much of the 50 he's in.
Right, we don't have a plan. We got something in the middle of between the two. And then consider the waiver.
But they, just, I don't know. I'd love to understand better. I guess I don't, but I'm not sure how, with a stairway, to my knowledge, is not impervious. I'm not sure how that really would impact the wetlands in any significant way.
Part of the structure. I mean, it's against our regulations.
Yeah, it's in the bylaw. It's in our bylaw that.
I understand that,
decks are pulled out.
but we're trying to find a solution that provides a safe egress for my family. And I don't know if you all review the documentation that's provided prior to the meeting, or?
Yeah, we all read it.
Okay, well, I have a member of my family here to document anything that do you have any doubts as to the veracity of the documentation provided? happy to provide any additional documentation or if you need more information, including a revised site plan, I'll do another one.
Unfortunately, we can't even give them guidance on them either because we don't have a plan.
I'd be very cautious to give guidance. The guidance that we've given consistently is comply with the 25-foot no disturb, not a problem, and comply with the 50-foot no build, that's been the problem. The fact that you had an existing structure that was compliant speaks to an alternative that does exist. You could rebuild and maintain what was there. There's no question about that. To
So
change it in such a way, regardless of any reasoning behind it, in contrary to our bylaw, is what we've been wrestling with for several months now. And that's only after the fact that we got a violation notice is what started all this, with work being done, without the permits. So, we've all been kind of dragged through this process, including you, for that matter, of trying to wrestle with something that may be just too much of an improvement in contrary to our bylaw.
Okay, so...
I'm not convinced there aren't other alternatives, including closing the deck and closing the door. You've got another porch that's compliant, get decks off of that. That can satisfy your second means of egress from the back should you need it. You don't need to have a stairway from that. You can connect the two. There are other alternatives that meet the 50-foot no disturb. There are, period. And it's that alternative that we've been prodding you to provide, and we're hearing you've made some compromises and you're willing to do some of them, but I think in the end, we're still looking what's sounding like a waiver of the 50-foot no build. And I don't think the burden of alternatives have been met.
That's the direction I've been trying to explain to you for the last 3 meetings that I've been here for. Is there clearly several alternatives that can be done?
Such as?
Well, like Mr. Lynch said, connecting the two, leaving the stairs where they were.
Leaving the stairs where they were. Have you read any of the...
I read it all. I read it that your daughter
What,
fell.
you don't believe it, or what?
Well, when was the house built?
1995.
There are alternatives to... We understand that the steps where they currently are, that you have problems with them. And I'm not questioning the fact that you have problems with them and that you've had incidences where people have been hurt and animals have been hurt trying to use them. I'm not debating that with you. However, you've shown us 2 plans with steps leading down from that deck.
Trying to find
Okay?
a solution.
And the steps have been coming down in the same location off the deck.
Because there's no other...
Now, hear me out. And what we've asked you to do is to come up with some, since those steps that come down off the deck violate the 50-foot no-build zone, according to our local bylaw, we're saying there needs to be an alternative analysis done to prove to us that the only alternative you have is what you want or what you're presenting. Okay? Now, you haven't done that yet. There are, I see from the plans you've presented, I see at least 2 other alternatives that could be investigated, whether they have problems for you or not. But there are at least 2 others that are outside the 50-foot zone that you could look at and determine whether or not they suit your needs. Now, you haven't presented that to us, and it's described why those alternatives don't work or can't work, and that the only one that can work is the one you're presenting and that you want us to approve.
Without
That's what we're asking you
reconstructing
to
the
do.
home?
Pardon?
Without, you're telling me to close off the deck? Is that what I understand you say?
There are
The stairway from it.
There are stairways from the deck that coming down to the ground that are outside the 50-foot no-build zone. Okay? You also you had one plan, the last plan you showed us,
that you said you've now discarded because the structural engineer has said it won't work, showed the deck that those steps are coming off of butts up against a porch, I assume an enclosed porch. And then on the other side of that enclosed porch, you showed a proposed deck. Okay? Now, I assume there are doors that lead to the decks from that enclosed porch. Is there a
Not
door that...
Presently, there is not, no. There would be.
Okay. But there would be. But there could be a way of coming off that enclosed porch to the proposed deck that you intend to do it, then down to the ground, that you could use from both decks. You could have a door on either side of that porch that could lead, that allow people to exit from one to get from the big deck to the enclosed porch, so you can go in and out as you chose. And then you go through to the other deck and then down to the outside. That's one alternative. Whether that is even open to you or not, or works for you, you have to answer that question. Then you can come off the existing deck and get down perpendicular to the deck, down over where those old stairs are, down to the ground, and stay within the 50-foot zone. Those are two options to look at. Now, you haven't presented those and presented an argument as to why those can't work.
And
those are
you
two.
don't need stairs from your deck. You desire them. Your
Well,
means
he
of egress, you
desired-
can go out through the basement.
Well, you can, but you don't need them. That's one alternative. You don't need it. Or you could go into the porch, that enclosed porch, and then out to the other proposed deck.
And add steps to
down,
it.
and steps down to it. That's a way out if you wanted to. Now, that may not be an option that you like or want, and you'd need to present that to us to say this can't work and for this reason, that reason, whatever, and then convince us that that's not a true option. But you haven't presented any of that.
Same thing as another one.
And we've been asking you to present options to that, so that, if anything, if the only option that worked, truly worked, was to violate the no-build zone, then you could request a waiver, and we would consider it. But without that other information presented to us, I think members of the board see options that are open to you to investigate, to explore, and you haven't done that yet. And we're asking you, explore those, because those could keep you out of the 50-foot zone and provide the egress from that deck that you're looking to have. And without that information, we got a problem.
I didn't realize that it involved that sort of solution. I thought we were talking about the deck exclusively.
The other one is where we talked about the stairs, and you're eliminating the stairs, but you're expanding the deck where the stairs were, correct?
That was just the
Well, I'm just
design
saying,
that the
that's part of it.
contractor offered, because it's already, there's already...
Well, why can't we run the stairs from there to the end of the house? The other way?
where?
Turn the stairs into deck, and then paralleling the end of the house, take the stairs out along the 50-foot
And run the
no-build
stairway
zone
down, you're out of
line.
the 50.
And then you'll be away from the eave of the house, which is shedding the water onto the stairs.
When you still have to access the stairs at the same point?
You would turn this into deck, and the stairs would come out that way. Right? Would that work?
Right.
I mean, that's just another alternative.
Another alternative.
We're not supposed, it's not our job
I know.
to give alternative. We're trying to, believe me, we're trying to help you, but I mean.
I think what we're doing is demonstrating that there are other alternatives that need to be exhausted, because right now, based on the information we have, a denial of the waiver is what's likely. We see that there are alternatives.
Correct.
And
Well,
there was
what I'd like to do then is I'm depending on, I think, too many professionals to tell me what should be done here. I'd like to have a continuance for another 2 weeks and see, and look at those things. If that's all right.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one request? There was a plan that was approved by the commission under an NOI. I think it's expired now. There was a layout of various structures in the backyard, not too different from this, and I think it all complied. That to me, unless I'm forgetting something.
It was in 2007. That was before four of the last falls occurred in the last 13 months. My mother fell in 2009, so it was another.
All I'm trying to say is I think that's a good starting point for an alternative that would work. I mean, most of it worked.
He didn't change the deck stairs, though, is what he's saying. That didn't propose any change to that deck.
That's correct.
All right, so who wants to
We
continue?
need more alternatives.
We need a motion to continue. So,
Okay, thank you.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Whose claim is this, yours?
Yeah, that one.
Or the Jen?
This is Doug's.
Doug's and who? This was Jen's.
Ooh. That's Doug's. Okay. Do we have any continuances down here? No, okay. NACC 126 COC request for 107 Camping Road.
So the new plantings were installed. Heidi went out to confirm. We observed it in the big rain event, whenever that was. What do we have, like 3 inches of rain? Or it held water for a good long time, and the site is very wet, but it functioned and nothing washed out or eroded or anything. So I recommend issuing the full and final.
No, none.
Joe? Deb?
All set.
All set.
Move that we issue a full and final COC for NACC number 126, 107 Campion Road.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Next one is 242449, piece of CO request for 84 Pine Ridge Road.
I didn't even give you my pretty photos from the last one. This is an odd one. Not that we can't approve it, but everyone remembers. We have Regency Place that's now constructed in here off of Blue Ridge. There's that sewer that runs. For some reason, this sewer line never got a COC, and it's associated with the construction of Pine Ridge.
Okay.
The house that wants a release from it is way the heck over here. Sewer line here, no COC.
It's just a partial.
Yep. Any questions?
Administrative cleanup.
Yeah.
No question.
Motion?
I move that we issue a PCOC for 242449 84 Pine Ridge Road.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Next one is COC request for 242-1422, 21 High Street. This is your.
So Julie finally stuck around long enough for those plantings to grow.
Keeping my fingers crossed on those plantings out there. It's
No
only
one's
been
gonna-
5 years.
no one's gonna mow them
She went out
down.
and watered them every day.
I was watering in the middle of the night. I didn't tell Dave yet, but. So, yeah, we're just here, we filed a request for a certificate of compliance in June of this summer. For the record, I'm Julie Vondrock, here on behalf of RCG. We had filed, been struggling with keeping plants along the Topper Bank. of the pond on the site, but I think we're there. Practically 25 additional plants were installed, and additional plant, like 5 additional from what I previously proposed back in June, were installed as a just to fall back if we have any die-off. A new post was also installed. There was a small willow sapling growing along the detention pond that had been removed, so it was in compliance with their stormwater plan. It's a little clump of Japanese knotweed out there that has been sprayed, and it looks like it's dead, and hopefully will expand in that area. So at this time, we're just asking for a full final compliance on the East Mill site. And the one less thing one less thing, I'm sorry?
Did you get that sign up?
No, I actually don't. I don't know if you brought them today.
There's our one post without a sign.
Yeah, we have to just get our sign, and I will be on site weekly across the street, so I will ensure that sign's on that post. And I will send you a picture, Jen, when the sign's on.
All the other signs are there.
Any questions?
We're good to go, Jen?
Yep.
All verified, no questions.
All set.
Doug? Well, Jen says you're
We can
thriving.
collect later.
Thriving. Okay,
Yeah, we
motion?
owe them $1.
We should give them more money then.
I move that we issue this certificate of compliance for 242 1422 High Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Jack, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is 242-1630, 75 Summer Street.
So the only issue with this one is there was patio constructed under the deck. Gravel. Seems to be a common occurrence these days. It's the new air conditioning pad.
Jen, here.
A generator pad.
Outside of 50-foot.
Any questions, Jack?
No, no questions.
Joe?
It's outside the 50? It's got to be if the deck's over it.
Yeah, they have
gotta
a
be.
beautiful stone wall all the way around the property, so it's well within the wall and everything.
Deb? Doug? Okay. Motion?
I move that we issue the certificate of compliance for 242 1630 75 Summer Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1566, 95 Olympic Lane.
So this is the as-built. Heidi said the stone patio is much larger than was proposed, but it's all within the 50. Let me just get her notepad of that one.
Is that the stone patio?
So that's the as-built stone patio. And this was the proposed patio. Yeah, right there, just this.
So they shrunk you.
And they built this. Oh, no, they built all that, and they proposed that.
But it's outside the 50.
It is.
And it came in as a single-family house, so it's not subject to stormwater anyway, just PMPs.
Right. It's just probably about triple the size of what they proposed. Yeah, it's all wise, just one of those projects where,
It could have easily not complied, because they didn't ask.
yeah.
That's what
Any questions?
No questions. None for me.
Motion?
I move that we issue the certificate of compliance for 1566-95 Olympic Lane.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1601, POC request for 19 to 21 Katuitt Street.
Do you want to hold that one aside?
Yeah,
Because I'm going to recuse myself at the end, or?
You don't need, it's just continuing because they
All
have
right.
till November 1st to comply with the enforcement
Okay.
order.
So when, to the next meeting?
I would go,
Two?
I would go to the first November meeting, because by November 1st, they should have it done. So by the November 4th meeting, we should be able to act.
They are aware that if they're not, it goes back to the
It goes,
original
yes.
enforcement order. Okay, so we need a motion to continue to what, Deb?
November 4th.
November, request to continue November 4th.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
One
Opposed?
abstention.
And one abstention. Okay. Next one is 242-1620, 179 Osgood Street. This is continuing also, right?
No, but I thought someone was going to be here on this one. We did get the as-built. There are the boulders. Hold on.
Well, this is,
Is this the Parson Barn?
yeah, the problem is we conditioned the fence. They didn't
602
install it.
Boxford, hold on.
So
It's a non-compliance.
So it's non-compliant. So we either continue or deny him. There's
Well,
nobody
they've
here.
requested the COC.
It'd be hard to deny it with them not here.
Okay.
Well, they,
The engineer was, I spoke to the engineer at the office today. I was there. So he knew. But he's not here, so
so a guardrail was proposed, boulders were installed rather than the guardrail. Let me show you the
and boulders is a loose term.
photos.
So they never put the guardrail in. Well, that's what was conditioned.
Yeah.
They agreed to that.
So you can see the boulders where the guardrail is supposed to be. And they asked for a waiver of the filing fee since it was a CPA project done with, town funds.
The filing fee I can live with, but the condition of the fences was conditioned.
Well, and we can give them the opportunity to correct it.
I don't remember the debate. Was there
We did talk about it.
We
a
did
guardrail
debate.
not proposed and we
They
wanted
had
one?
originally just said they were going to put wooden blocks, I think, and then we talked about boulders, and the commission said, no, this is a parking at the top of a retaining wall, we want a guardrail. And then they went in and put boulders in.
And they revised the plan to show it, or we conditioned the guardrail?
The plan and the requirement was for a guardrail.
Okay, so, I mean, clearly, we have enough information to deny it whether they're here or not, but I think it's a matter of fairness, we continue it and deny it to their face. They're not in compliance. Period.
They didn't want to give us an as-built.
Of course not, because they didn't do it. I mean, there's really not much to say here, other than
No, I know.
the courtesy to come back and hear it from us.
I spoke to the engineer and told him what was going to happen today. That's
Well,
why-
I
that's why
thought if
didn't
they were
come.
going to at least try to defend the boulders, they'd have somebody here to defend it, so I'm surprised no one's
We wouldn't buy it
here.
anyway, especially if it was what was talked about earlier on.
You go over that slope, somebody's going to get hurt. All right.
Okay, I will let them know. So continue till 2 weeks.
Sure. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay, next one is 296 Berry Street, release of enforcement order.
So this was an EO issued back in 1998 for brush dumping in a wetland. I don't know.
Did you say 1998?
Yep. So a realtor came in and went through the file and found the old EO. So Heidi went out. She did find 2 small leaf piles in the wetland, had them cleaned up, and recommends that you release the enforcement order.
questions?
No?
Motion?
I guess I move that we release the enforcement order dated October 28, 1998 for 296 Berry Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay, next one is 242-1627, bond release for the Glade. Where am I here?
These photos. I'm just looking for the photos of.
Zarico's learning first grade, our position in line, by the way, so I expected to be last tonight.
This is
So-
a pretty- This is a pretty large request.
Lou, would you like me to explain, or I wasn't sure if you needed anything more than the correspondence
Yeah, well, like
that I
I
sent
said,
in?
the work isn't done on the finished work includes stone wall, framing, planting, replication. 2 of the houses are under large portions of the site remain disturbed. Final paving is not done. There are no as-built in the stormwater system or wall.
So what is done, there's finished work includes stormwater management system, a stone wall, the no disturb, bridge framing, planting of the replication area, and construction on 2 of the houses, although not finished, right?
Not finished, no.
Not finished. So the stormwater management system is largely stabilized, the lots are not.
Yes.
Paving is binder coat at this point.
That's correct, yeah. If you recall, this is a low-impact conservation design. The road, all the shoulders you see there are all part of the drainage and stormwater management system. We didn't seed those, we sodded those. Those are all in place, fully rooted. They've been there for months. And likewise, the rest of the stormwater system is all in place and stable. We didn't have a specific, I guess, component detail to this $35,000 bond. I went out and did all those things that could be done at this stage, including building all of the stone walls rather than fences around the entire perimeter of the site on all the lots. I don't think there's anything else we could have done up to this point, so I put in a request that I thought was rational, thought was reasonable relative to the scope of work that remains. As we know, typically, I think the per lot bonding tried to take that into account, and the replication area growing, which is there, but needs its growing, and tried to leave something there, to take care of that in the event anything has to be redone there.
Bless you.
All right, Jack?
Well, it seems like everything's built and it's about as stable as it, well, pretty close to being totally stable. I'm looking at it in terms of what it would take to cover any additional costs due to damage. So it sounds like, where the lawns aren't constructed, trees aren't planted on the lots themselves.
Only 2 of the houses of the 5 are under construction. There are 3 still remaining to be built.
Yeah. So you
So
have a
final
stormwater
landscaping,
management in
so-
place. So if something bad would happen, a lot of siltation migrates down in, it would require cleaning, of the stormwater management structures. What else?
The final coat of the pavement,
The pavement.
the as-built.
We don't bond that.
No.
No, we would,
Yeah.
if this was a conventional stormwater system, you'd want your stormwater system in the roadway to be able to collect the water and get it in. But this is country drainage, LID principles. So your binder is
one sewer manhole gets lifted an inch and a half. Sewer lid. There is no structures of any kind
Everything else is running
in the
off
pavement. There
country
is
drainage.
one sewer manhole, that's it.
But it makes this development different than most.
It is. It's a little bit...
Designed as a public way and intended to be accepted at town meeting. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And, the road has a bond. We have a, I don't know, about a $20-some-odd thousand roadway bond, which essentially accounts for pavement and turning the road over. The pavement is an $8,000 or $9,000 job. This is a 220-foot cul-de-sac. It's half the length of my driveway. It's not a big project. But to the comments there, those areas that still require stabilization aren't development specifically, they're lot specific, if you will. The development infrastructure and stabilization and much of the lot stabilization, by virtue of having that low impact swale in the front, is already in place.
That's how I was looking at it as well. I mean, at first blush, it seemed like you're asking for too much.
I realize that,
Really
yeah.
did. And then I looked at it more carefully and understood the whole LID approaches to it and the fact that it is pretty well established. I think each of the next lots that come in on their own. I know they're approved as part of the overall development, but they come in with, fortified erosion controls to protect that other area away from it better, and I think you can certainly protect it.
And those erosion controls that are in place, Joe, just so you know, we also, if you haven't been there, you really should, it'd be nice if you could take a look. I mean, we built some really substantial stone walls that actually precede, on the upslope side, the erosion control. I mean, that's a substantial protected barrier.
I understood your methodology, 3,000 per lot, that makes some sense to me. And some provision, for vegetation that might need to be, cleaned up. The only thing I'm seeing is an as-built, and I'm just saying, at $5,000, because we need an as-built on.
You don't have the as-built, Jen?
We do not.
We have one foundation as-built, that's it.
But we don't have it for the subdivision, so we need the as-built. So hold 5,000 away for that. I'm saying, 12.5 is what I'd be proposing as a counter to the 17.5. But once the as-built comes in and we have it on file, then we could ask for an additional bond reduction.
Okay, that's completely reasonable. I didn't realize that as-built was turned in months ago to DPW of the infrastructure. And I'm sorry if that didn't make it to you, Jen. I apologize.
I think the only as-built we got was the foundation.
The two foundations, yeah, on 3 and 5. Yeah,
Well, one's out of jurisdiction.
Yeah, one's out of the 100.
So I think holding 12.5 is reasonable, and then we could reduce it some more once the as-built comes in. I think,
Well, the request was for half.
17.5, but I'm saying hold an additional 5 for the as-built.
Release 12.5.
We release 12.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and that as-built is there. That can be delivered, sort of.
And then, to Jack's point of, what, whoever raised it, might have been Lou, what other vulnerabilities might exist about, during construction. I think with the erosion controls are going to protect things, and I think, as far as any silt migration into the country drainage, that's all going to wash, it's all going to be cleaned up prior to roadway acceptance. So I think we're protected on that end, too.
Doug?
Okay. So my motion will be to release $12,500 of the bond that we hold.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
Next one is approval of schedule for 2016. Time flies, you having fun.
Donna, do I have a copy of the 2016 schedule? So the issue, The issue, the way it's written right now, is if we do the one meeting in December, we have a 4-week meeting gap between that week and the
Approval.
second,
I'll be here in July.
and the second meeting in, or the first meeting, which would be the second week in January. A 4-week meeting gap?
No, I have a problem with it. No. Not at this time of year anyways.
Okay, so that's the only issue with that meeting schedule.
Okay, good. Motion to accept the 2016 meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Well,
My last
And
meeting.
then Winter Street.
Huh?
That's my last meeting.
No, it's not.
I don't have a copy.
Don't make us go to your house. You are not,
June 22nd.
you are not resigning. Okay, we got one decision. So,
This is the septic system replacement and the shed moving. on- So, where did I stick that? I wrote this so long ago, I forget where that condition is. So, in condition 35, the requested waiver to retain the shed constructed without a permit in the 50-foot no-build zone was denied, and the shed must be removed or relocated to a site outside of the 50-foot no-build zone. And since this is just a leach field, the bond is at 1,500.
I think you should put it at 100,000.
Oh, because of the retaining wall.
Hopefully move the shed. No?
Are we good with 1,500?
It's okay.
Am I kidding people?
I think I required wetland markers. Where are the markers?
Is there any debris that needs to be cleaned up? too?
Well, there was all that stuff out there buried, and it's not, they
Just
didn't
leave it
dump
there?
anything, yeah. I think that's what, they just,
Yeah, it was some cop outs or something.
Just a junkyard, yeah.
so I said at the 25 or the existing tree line, so in areas where they have, because the house is old, I just, that's that.
Any questions? Motion?
We didn't amend anything, right? Move that we adopt the order conditions 2.2, 1659 as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.